The grand hall shimmered under the glow of countless crystal lanterns as King Thorne's powerful voice boomed across the silent assembly. Omegas stood in trembling rows while Alphas watched with cold approval. With one sweeping declaration, the king shattered centuries of tradition. No Omega would ever again be allowed to form a sacred animal bond. They were declared unfit, weak, and dangerous to the realm's order. Elara felt her world crack open. Her heart pounded so violently she feared it would burst from her chest. This law would bury her dreams forever, leaving her kind invisible and voiceless for all time. Which country are you listening from? Please comment below. I'd love to know how far this story reaches. Tears stung her eyes, yet something fiercer than fear ignited within her. Before she could silence herself, Elara stepped forward from the crowd, her voice small but steady. Your Majesty, the ancient creatures have always chosen with their hearts, not with force alone. Our kind carries a different kind of strength. King Thorne's gaze turned to ice as it fixed upon her. Silence, Omega. Your words are a threat to everything we stand for. Guards, remove her from my sight at once. The command struck her like a physical blow. Humiliation burned across her face as every eye in the hall turned toward her with judgment and pity. She who had lived her life in the shadows was now painfully exposed. Spinning on her heel, Elara fled through the towering doors, her feet carrying her faster than she had ever run before. Twilight wrapped the world in deep violet and gold as she raced toward the edge of the forbidden forest. The territory of the great ancient wolf loomed ahead, a place of legend where every alpha who had entered had met a terrible end. Yet an invisible song pulled at her soul, urging her deeper into the trees. Shadows lengthened like long, accusing fingers across her path. Her breath came in sharp, desperate gasps while her mind whirled with terror and a fragile spark of hope. In the distance, a deep, ancient howl rose through the gathering darkness, sending chills racing across her skin. She was no longer merely running away from rejection. She was running toward the one being who might finally truly see her. Elara's feet pounded against the forest floor, sending dried leaves swirling like forgotten promises into the twilight air, while the distant howl echoed again through the ancient trees, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Yet even as terror and hope warred inside her chest, her mind tumbled backward through the endless days that had defined her existence, the invisible rhythm of a life lived in the shadows of the palace where Omegas were seen only as servants, never as souls with dreams of their own. Back in the Omega quarters, the stone walls felt colder than the winter winds that slipped through the narrow windows, and Elara moved through her daily tasks with the quiet precision of someone who had learned long ago that silence was the safest armor. She sat at the long wooden table, mending the heavy warrior cloaks of the Alphas, their rich fabric, heavy with the scent of battle and dominance, while her needle danced in and out of the seams, creating perfect stitches that no one would ever thank her for. The Alphas strode past the doorway, their laughter booming like thunder, never once glancing her way, as if she were no more than a shadow on the wall, a ghost in their grand kingdom. Her hands worked steadily, but her heart ached with the weight of erased futures the decree had stripped away the right to bond with the ancient creatures, the very creatures that had once brought balance and protection to their world. Why must we be deemed unfit? She wondered silently, her inner voice a quiet storm of frustration and sorrow. We carry the gentle strength that tames what force cannot conquer, yet they see only weakness in our heart. A soft knock at the chamber door pulled her from her thoughts, and she looked up to see Mira, one of the elder Omegas, slipping inside with a tray of simple bread and stew, their shared meal for the evening. Myra's eyes held the same quiet despair that mirrored Elara's own as they settled at the table together. They spoke in hushed tones, careful not to let their words carry beyond the thick walls. Did you hear what the king said today? Mira whispered, her voice trembling with the fear of being overheard. No more bonds for any of us. It is as if he wishes to erase us completely from the old ways. Elara set down her needle and reached across to squeeze Myra's hand, the touch warm and grounding in the dim lantern light. I know, Mira, she replied, her voice soft, yet laced with an unyielding resolve that surprised even herself. But I feel something stirring inside me, something they cannot take away. It is like a melody that has always lived in my blood, waiting for the right moment to rise. They shared a brief moment of understanding, their eyes meeting in the flickering glow as fellow Omegas who had learned to survive by becoming invisible, mending cloaks, serving meals in the great hall where alphas feasted and planned wars without ever noticing the hands that kept their world running smoothly. Elara's thoughts swirled with the crushing routine, the endless cycle of obedience and erasure that had worn down so many of her kind, yet within her a hidden spark refused to die. She clung to that inner melody, the soft notes she dared hum only when alone, a tune passed down through forgotten generations that seemed to calm the restless winds and soothe the wild creatures that sometimes wandered near the palace ground. It was her secret, her hidden light in the darkness of the decree that had shattered their rights in one cruel proclamation. As the memory faded, Elara found herself deeper in the forest, now the trees closing around her like protective arms, while the pull toward the great ancient wolf's territory grew stronger with every step. The melody she had clung to in those quiet moments of invisibility began to rise unbidden from her throat, a gentle hum that blended with the night sounds, filling the air with a soothing harmony that made the shadows seem less threatening. Her heart beat faster, not just with fear, but with a budding sense of purpose. The invisible girl from the Omega quarters was no longer content to mend cloaks and serve in silence. She was running towards something ancient and powerful, something that might finally see her for who she truly was. Yet as the underbrush rustled ahead and a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, just beyond the next ridge, her breath caught in her throat. The great wolf was closer than she had realized, and the choice she had made in her flight from rejection now hung in the balance like a fragile thread, ready to either bind her to destiny or snap under the weight of the unknown dangers that waited in the night. The glowing eyes in the darkness softened as Elara stepped forward into the moonlit glade where silver beams filtered through the ancient canopy, painting the mossy ground in ethereal patterns that seemed to breathe with quiet magic. Her heart still raced from the memory of her invisible days, yet here in this hidden pocket of the forest something ancient stirred within her, urging her to release the melody she had guarded so carefully. She drew a trembling breath and let the forgotten lullaby rise from her lips, soft at first like the whisper of wind through leaves, then growing into a rich harmonious tone that wove through the night air, carrying notes of comfort and unspoken strength. The skittish wild deer that had frozen at the edge of the clearing lifted its head, no longer poised for flight, but drawn closer, its delicate hooves moving with trusting steps until it stood mere feet away, its dark eyes meeting hers in a moment of pure connection. Elara's inner voice swelled with warmth and wonder as the gift she had hidden for so long, the whispering harmony, bloomed fully in her chest. This was no ordinary song, it was her hidden power passed through her bloodline, an empathetic resonance that calmed raging spirits and forged bonds where force had always failed. Unlike the alphas who commanded through dominance, her voice offered vulnerability and trust, creating harmony that could soothe even the wildest hearts. Yet the risk burned bright in her thoughts, for King Thorne's decree had branded such gifts dangerous, and Omegas like her unfit for any true connection. If discovered, her secret could mean exile, or worse, the complete erasure of everything she held dear. Still, the deer's gentle nuzzle against her hand filled her with a courage she had never known before, proving that her kind carried a different power, one that could change the world if only given the chance to be heard. A soft rustle in the underbrush pulled her from the melody, and there stood Mira, the trusted elder Omega, who had slipped away from the palace quarters to follow her young friend into the night, her face etched with both worry and awe under the moonlight. Mira's eyes widened as she witnessed the deer standing unafraid beside Elara, and she hurried forward, her voice a hushed blend of emotion and caution. "Elara, child, what have you done? This is the gift the old stories spoke of, the one our ancestors protected with their lives. You must be careful. The king's law forbids any Omega from even whispering such harmonies, let alone using them to call the Ancient Ones. Yet I see it in you, the same light that once brought peace before the Alphas feared what they could not control." Elara reached out, taking Mira's weathered hands in her own, the touch grounding her amid the swirl of fear and hope. "Mira, I cannot hide it any longer," she replied, her voice still carrying the lingering notes of the lullaby that made the deer linger peacefully at her side. "This gift, it feels like the only true part of me they have not taken away. In the palace I mended cloaks and served in silence, believing I was nothing, but now this melody shows me I was always meant for more. It warms me like sunlight after endless shadow, reminding me that even the powerless can touch the divine." Myra's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she squeezed Elara's hands tighter, her words flowing with the weight of shared generations. Then go, my dear, test its limits beyond these walls, for the great ancient wolf calls to those whose hearts sing true. But promise me you will return with the proof that our kind deserves to be seen. The elder Omega's encouragement wrapped around Elara like a protective cloak, strengthening her resolve as the deer finally bounded away into the trees, leaving a trail of calm in its wake. Elara's thoughts raced with empowerment. The invisible girl from the Omega quarters was awakening, and her voice would no longer remain trapped in the margins of the kingdom. She turned deeper into the forest, the melody rising once more from her throat, now bolder and clearer. As it blended with the night, sounds guiding her steps toward the heart of the forbidden territory. The pull grew irresistible, the ancient song in her blood resonating with something far greater than herself, something that promised to end the wars and rewrite the laws that had silenced her people for too long. Yet as the trees thinned ahead and the massive silhouette of the great ancient wolf began to emerge from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that sent both awe and trepidation through her soul, Elara realized the true test of her gift was only beginning. One wrong note, one moment of doubt, and the creature that had slain countless alphas might turn its power against her instead of offering the bond she so desperately sought, leaving her journey to end in the very darkness she had run toward with such fragile hope. The massive silhouette of the great ancient wolf became clearer with every step Elara took, her heart hammering against her ribs as the ancient trees gave way to a vast moonlit clearing shrouded in mist that swirled like living veils of mystery. The night air carried a primal energy that made her skin tingle, and the distant howl rose once more, vibrating through her entire being, pulling at the hidden depths of her soul. Yet as the sound wrapped around her, the present moment dissolved into a vivid flashback that transported her back to the sun-drenched days of her childhood, when innocence still bloomed in the small village home she once called her own. She was a young girl of 8, her laughter light and free as she played in the garden with her mother, whose gentle voice carried the same whispering harmony that now lived within Elara. Her father, a kind-hearted beta, had always shielded them from the growing tensions of the kingdom, but nothing could prepare them for the night the Alpha enforcers arrived. Torches blazed through the darkness, casting long menacing shadows as the soldiers stormed their modest dwelling, shouting decrees about bonding restrictions and the danger of Omegas connecting with sacred creatures. Elara remembered hiding beneath the kitchen table, her small body trembling as her father's voice rose in protest, only to be met with harsh commands and the sounds of struggle. Her mother had sung then a final soothing melody meant to calm the chaos, but it only enraged the Alphas further. They declared her gift a threat to order and tore the family apart, dragging her parents away into the night while young Elara was left behind, orphaned and alone, the weight of sudden silence crushing her spirit. The trauma had followed her into the palace quarters, where she learned to become invisible, mending cloaks and serving meals. Without a word, her voice locked away in fear of the same fate. Her inner thoughts now grappled with the lingering terror that still gripped her even after all these years. The powerlessness of that night had shaped her into someone who hid in the shadows, believing she had no right to dream of greater things. Yet here in the present, the memory fueled a quiet fire of defiance. She whispered a vow to the wind, her voice raw with emotion, as she stood at the edge of the wolf's territory. "I will not let them break me again," she said, her words carried on the breeze like a plea and a promise. "They took my family, my voice, and my future, but I refused to remain voiceless forever." The wind swirled around her in response, rustling the leaves as if echoing her determination, pushing her forward despite the dread pooling in her stomach. Elara took a deep breath and continued her steps, steady, now filled with a resolve born from pain and the unyielding belief that her hidden gift could change everything. The great wolf's presence grew stronger, the air humming with ancient power as she neared the heart of the clearing where the creature waited. Her thoughts turned empowering even as fear lingered. "This is my chance to prove that the powerless hold the true strength, that the voiceless can bring peace where war has reigned. I am no longer the orphaned child hiding from the world. I am Elara, and my song will be my weapon, my voice the key to a new dawn." As she entered the final stretch of the path, the mist parted dramatically, revealing the full, majestic form of the great ancient wolf standing tall, and imposing its eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that stopped her breath. The creature took a slow, deliberate step forward, its massive head lowering slightly, the moonlight glinting off its fur in silver waves. Elara's melody began to form on her lips, soft and tentative, but the wolf remained motionless, watching her with unblinking depth. One wrong breath, one faltering note, and the bond she sought could turn to rejection, or worse, leaving. Her journey to end in the very shadows she had fought so hard to escape, with her heart laid bare, before a being that could either save or destroy the fragile hope she had carried all this way. The massive form of the great ancient wolf stood before Elara in the heart of the moonlit clearing, its fur shimmering like starlit silver under the ancient canopy that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Her heart thundered in her chest, a mix of terror and an inexplicable pull that drew her forward despite every instinct screaming to flee. She began to sing, her voice rising soft and pure, the whispering harmony flowing from her lips like a river of light weaving through the night air, with notes of vulnerability and trust that no alpha had ever understood. The wolf's fierce eyes locked onto hers, not with the rage that had slain so many before, but with a deep ancient recognition that sent waves of warmth cascading through her soul. Step by step she approached, her melody growing bolder as the creature lowered its massive head, its powerful muscles relaxing in a way that spoke of surrender and connection. Elara's inner thoughts swirled with empowering realization. I was invisible in the palace, mending cloaks and serving in silence, but here I am seen, truly seen, by a being of legend. This gift is my voice, my power, and it will no longer be silenced. As the final notes hung in the air like golden threads, the great wolf gently laid its enormous head. In her lap, the weight both heavy and comforting, a sacred bond forging in that instant. A swirl of golden light erupted around them, bathing the clearing in radiant glow that pulsed with peace and harmony, radiating outward like ripples across a vast ocean. Elara felt the connection deep in her bones, the wolf's ancient wisdom flowing into her heart, filling the voids left by years of oppression and trauma. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she whispered softly, stroking the creature's fur with trembling hands. You chose me when no one else would. Together we will bring the change they denied us. The wolf responded with a low rumble of contentment, its eyes closing in trust as the bond sealed itself in unbreakable loyalty. Across the distant borders, the miracle unfolded in waves of reverence. Enemy packs that had been locked in fierce battle for months suddenly froze, their weapons lowering, as the divine presence of the great ancient wolf washed over them like a soothing balm. Alphas who had fought under King Thorne's banners watched in stunned silence as their foes stood down, the wars ending not with bloodshed, but with a collective awe for the creature they all considered divine. The three simultaneous border conflicts that had drained the kingdom's resources and claimed countless lives came to an abrupt halt, the air itself seeming to sigh with relief as peace descended upon the battlefield. Meanwhile, at the front lines, King Thorne stood tall, his armor gleaming under the torchlight, his mind racing with confusion as reports flooded in from his scouts. The enemy is retreating, my king, one messenger gasped, breathless from the ride. Not in defeat, but in reverence. The great wolf has chosen, and its power has stilled the wars. Thorne's brow furrowed, his inner thoughts briefly surfacing in a moment of deep turmoil. This cannot be. My decree was meant to protect the order, yet an Omega has done what my armies could not. How has this happened? He barked orders to his generals, his voice steady, but laced with unease as the battlefield fell. Eerily quiet around him, the sounds of clashing steel replaced by the rustle of wind and the distant calls of night creatures. The king who had rejected her kind now faced the reality of his mistake, the wars he had waged ending at the choice of the very being he had sought to control. Elara remained in the clearing, her bond with the wolf strengthening with every breath, the golden light fading into a soft glow that enveloped them both. Her thoughts turned to the kingdom. She had fled the humiliation in the grand hall, now feeling like a distant memory replaced by a surging sense of purpose. I was the powerless one, the voiceless shadow, but this bond proves that even the smallest voice can end the greatest storm. Yet as the first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, a new sound reached her ears, the thunder of approaching hooves from the direction of the palace scouts, no doubt sent by the king himself. The wolf lifted its head, its eyes alert and protective as Elara's heart skipped a beat. The moment of peace was fragile, and the true test of their bond was only beginning as the ruler who had cast her aside now raced toward the truth that would shatter his world forever. The golden light of the new bond still lingered around Elara like a warm embrace as she rose slowly. From the mossy ground her fingers still tangled in the great ancient wolf's thick fur. The creature stood tall beside her now, its massive form moving with protective grace as it followed her through the dense forest paths, shielding her from the prying eyes of the world that had once deemed her invisible. Her heart overflowed with awe and a newfound courage that made her steps lighter than they had ever been in the palace shadows where she had mended cloaks and served in silence. I was the invisible one, the one they cast aside, but this bond sees me, it chooses me, she thought, her inner voice singing with empowerment that filled every corner of her being. The wolf's presence was like a living shield, its ancient power radiating outward, calming the wild creatures and even softening the harsh edges of the underbrush that had once scratched at her skin in her desperate flight. They moved together in silent harmony, the wolf's low rumble vibrating through her bones like a promise of safety and belonging that she had longed for her entire life. Suddenly the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the trees, and Elara froze her breath, catching as a group of scouting alphas emerged from the thicket, their armor glinting in the dappled sunlight, their faces set in grim determination, sent by the king to investigate the miracle. The lead scout raised his hand, signaling his men to halt, his eyes narrowing in disbelief at the sight of the great wolf standing protectively at her side. "What is this sorcery?" he growled, his voice laced with suspicion and anger. "An Omega bonding with the divine creature? This defies everything the king has ordered and threatens the order we have built." Elara's inner thoughts surged with strength rather than the fear that had once defined her. "Let them see me now. My voice, my gift, has brought peace where their swords only brought pain and division." She lifted her chin, her melody still humming softly under her breath, and the wolf growled low, a warning that made the scouts step back involuntarily, their hands tightening on their weapons, yet unable to advance. The creature's eyes flashed with ancient power, its body positioning itself between Elara and the men, like a living barrier of fur and muscle that radiated divine authority. The scouts exchanged uneasy glances, their leader's face flushing with frustration, yet the divine aura of the wolf seemed to sap their aggression, leaving them hesitant and confused, as if the bond's influence whispered peace into their hardened hearts. One of them muttered under his breath about reporting back to the king immediately, but they did not advance further, the bond's influence holding them at bay like an invisible force. Elara felt a surge of empowerment, her voice finding words for the first time in open confrontation. "This bond is not sorcery, it is harmony," she said, her tone steady and empowering, carrying the weight of her journey from silence to strength. "The great wolf chose with its heart, and it has ended the wars you fought so fiercely. Perhaps it is time the king learned that true power lies not in decrees, but in listening to the voiceless among us." The scouts shifted uncomfortably, their leader's face showing a flicker of doubt before he waved them back, ordering a hurried retreat deeper into the forest, their departure marked by uneasy glances over their shoulders as if the wolf's presence urged them away from any thought of harm. Elara exhaled a breath. She didn't know she was holding her hand resting on the wolf's side, feeling its warmth and loyalty flood her with courage that made her stand taller than ever before. Her thoughts whirled with the realization that she was no longer running or hiding in the margin. The bond was pulling her deeper into its influence, transforming her from the oppressed Omega into a force that could not be ignored or silenced any longer. Meanwhile, far from the clearing, King Thorne urged his powerful horse through the winding paths toward the forbidden territory, his mind a storm of frustration and uneasy curiosity after the messengers had brought word of the wolf's choice and the sudden inexplicable peace that had stilled the borders. The king who had outlawed such bonds now rode with urgency, his inner thoughts turning in deep turmoil as the forest blurred past him. How could an Omega achieve what my armies could not? My decree was to protect the realm from chaos, yet this changes everything I believed. I must see this for myself and confront the one who has upended my world with a single song. As he crested a rocky ridge, the path ahead revealed the remnants of an enemy ambush that had been prepared to strike his forces in the chaos following the war's end, but now the attackers lay disoriented, their weapons discarded in reverence to the divine aura that had washed over the land like a wave of calm. Thorne's horse reared slightly as one of the fallen enemies stirred, but the wolf's influence had halted the attack before it could begin, leaving the king narrowly evading what could have been a deadly trap. His frustration boiled over into reluctant admiration as he dismounted to survey the scene, his voice barking orders to his accompanying guards to secure the area. "This piece, it came from her, from the Omega. I rejected," he muttered to himself, his perspective shifting briefly in this important moment of realization. "The mistake of my law stares me in the face, and I cannot look away." Yet even as he pressed onward toward Elara's location, the forest seemed to whisper warnings of greater changes to come. Back with Elara, the wolf suddenly tensed, its ears pricking forward as a new sound reached them, the distant thunder of more hooves approaching, this time from the king's own party. Her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, the bond deepening its hold as she realized the ruler who had humiliated her was drawing near. The protective presence of the wolf at her side gave her strength, but the shadows between the trees began to stir with unknown figures watching from afar, loyalists to the old decree perhaps, who saw her bond as a threat that could not be allowed to stand, leaving the fragile peace she had forged hanging in the balance as the first riders broke through the trees, their eyes locking onto her and the divine creature in stunned silence. The wolf's massive form moved with graceful silence beside Elara as they followed a winding path through the forest until the sound of rushing water grew louder, drawing them to a crystal clear stream that sparkled under the midday sun like threads of liquid silver weaving through moss-covered rocks. She paused at the water's edge, her fingers still resting lightly on the creature's warm fur, feeling the steady rhythm of its breath sync with her own in a harmony that went beyond word. The great ancient wolf lowered its head to drink, and Elara knelt beside it, dipping her hands into the cool flow, letting the water cleanse the last traces of her flight from the palace. A gentle melody rose unbidden from her throat, soft and pure, the whispering harmony filling the air with notes that danced along the current, calming the ripples and inviting birds to perch on nearby branches as if the forest itself leaned in to listen. The wolf lifted its head, its ancient eyes meeting hers with a depth that made her heart swell, and in that quiet moment she felt its wisdom flowing into her like a river of forgotten knowledge. Ancient battles turned to peace through gentle strength rather than force. Elara's inner thoughts bloomed with empowering clarity, washing away the shadows of her past. "I was the girl who hid in the Omega quarters, mending cloaks and serving meals in silence, believing my voice held no power, but this bond shows me the truth. My gift, my song, it has always been the bridge between worlds, and now it pulses with purpose stronger than any decree could ever break." She sang louder, her voice rich with emotion, carrying the weight of every unspoken dream, every tear shed in the margins of the kingdom. The wolf responded with a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through her bones, a sound of deep acceptance and loyalty that made tears glisten in her eyes. Together they created a pocket of serenity by the stream where the sunlight filtered through leaves in golden shafts, illuminating the bond that had already ended 3 wars and now promised to heal far more. "I never imagined this," she whispered, her words blending seamlessly with the melody as she stroked the wolf's fur. "You chose me when the king and his laws cast me aside. Your presence has given me a voice that echoes across borders, and I promise to use it to lift every Omega who still walks in silence." The creature nuzzled closer, its massive head brushing her shoulder in a gesture so tender it nearly stole her breath, and she felt the ancient power settling into her soul, transforming fear into unshakable resolve. "This is my journey from invisible to seen, from powerless to a force that commands respect without raising a hand." The melody continued, weaving its magic until the stream itself seemed to sing back, and Elara's heart filled with the certainty that her gift was not a curse but the key to a brighter world. Meanwhile, in the grand council chamber of the capital, King Thorne strode through the heavy oak doors. His armor still bearing the dust of the forest, right, his face set in a mask of royal composure that hid the storm raging within. The room buzzed with tense voices as war-weary alphas gathered around the long table, their faces etched with exhaustion and growing resentment. Whispers of the Omega's deed had already spread like wildfire through the halls, the news that the Great ancient wolf had chosen an omega and stilled the borders in a single act of divine, while now challenging everything the king had decreed. One burly alpha slammed his fist on the table, his voice rising in accusation. Your Majesty, this is the result of your law stripping omegas of their rights. We fought those wars on your command, believing it would secure our dominance, yet now peace comes from the very creature we sought to control, and it chooses her. The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, some alphas nodding while others shot dark glances toward the throne where Thorne stood tall. His inner thoughts churned with regret that had been building since the first reports reached him. I believed my decree protected the realm from chaos, from the unpredictable hearts of omegas, yet her song, her bond, has ended what my armies could not. How deeply have I erred in rejecting what I did not understand? Before he could respond, a group of dissenters pushed forward from the back of the chamber, their faces flushed with anger, one of them stepping dangerously close to the dais, his hand hovering near his sword hilt.
Welcome back to our channel. Today Mott V brought you a brand new and incredibly captivating story, sure to please you if we watch the whole video. This story is entirely fictional. The video was created using artificial intelligence AI and is designed to provide positive entertainment and educational value to viewers aged Muiba and up. Now let us continue exploring today's story.
You outlawed the bonds, and now the wolf turns against us all, he snarled, his words laced with betrayal. We lost brothers in those battles while you sat here crafting laws that ignored the old ways. If this Omega's gift can bring peace, then perhaps your rule has blinded us to true strength. The chamber fell into a charged silence as guards tensed ready to intervene, but Thorne raised a hand. His voice steady, yet carrying the weight of his shifting perspective. Enough. I hear your pain, and I will not dismiss it. The wars are ended, and for that we must examine our path forward, even if it means facing truths I once refused to see. His words hung in the air, diffusing some tension, but the dissenter's eyes narrowed with lingering threat as he backed away, muttering under his breath about gathering support among the packs. Thorne's isolation deepened in that moment, the alphas who had once cheered his commands now divided and uncertain, leaving him standing alone on the dais with the echo of his mistake ringing louder than any battlefield roar. As the council adjourned, and he turned toward the window overlooking the kingdom, the whispers of Elara's name reached him again, carried on the wind like a call he could no longer ignore. Yet even as he contemplated his next move, a messenger burst into the chamber, breathless with urgent news of unrest brewing in the outer villages where loyalists to the old decree plotted against the Omega who had upended everything. Thorne's jaw tightened, his thoughts turning toward the forest where she waited with the wolf, the fragile new piece suddenly feeling like a thread stretched taut over an abyss. Back by the stream, Elara's song faded into a peaceful hush as the wolf suddenly lifted its head, ears pricking forward, its body tensing with alert energy that sent a shiver through her. She rose to her feet, her hand resting protectively on its side, her inner voice affirming her purpose. Even as distant sounds of approaching riders filtered through the trees, the bond pulled at her stronger than before, drawing her toward whatever lay ahead but the shadows. Between the branches stirred once more with figures moving stealthily closer, this time not scouts, but determined dissenters whose eyes burned with opposition to the change she represented. The piece she had forged hung in delicate balance as the first arrows whistled through the air, aimed not at her, but at the heart of the kingdom's future, forcing her to confront the cost of her voice in a world still clinging to the old ways. The arrows whistled through the air like accusations from the old world Elara had left behind, slicing the peaceful hush by the stream into sudden chaos as the wolf lunged forward, its massive body becoming a living shield of silver fur and ancient power that deflected the shafts with effortless grace. She dropped low behind a cluster of mossy boulders, her heart pounding with the fierce rhythm of survival while her inner thoughts blazed with unyielding strength. I will not cower anymore. The powerless girl who once mended cloaks in silence is gone. My voice, my bond has already ended wars, and it will not be silenced by fear or arrows now. The great ancient wolf let out a deep resonant growl that vibrated through the ground, sending the hidden dissenters scattering into the trees, their faces pale with awe and terror as the divine aura of the creature washed over them like an invisible tide of peace. Elara rose slowly, her hand resting on the wolf's flank, feeling its warmth steady her as the last Arrow clattered harmlessly to the ground, and the attackers fled deeper into the forest, their shouts fading like echoes of a dying era. The hidden grove opened before her, now a sanctuary of ancient oaks whose branches formed a natural canopy dappled with golden sunlight filtering through leaves that whispered secrets on the breeze. She stepped into its embrace, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers, and Earth the wolf at her side like a guardian from legend, its eyes scanning the surroundings with protective intelligence. Her melody began again, soft and empowering, rising from her throat to weave through the grove, calming the lingering tension and filling her soul with the certainty that her gift was reshaping the world one note at a time. Yet the thunder of hooves grew louder from the main path, and Elara turned her breath, catching as King Thorne emerged from the trees, his powerful horse slowing to a halt at the grove's edge, his armor still dust-streaked from the urgent ride, his face a mask of royal command that could not hide the storm in his eyes. Their gazes locked across the clearing, hers steady and luminous with the bond's light, his widening in recognition as the scout's reports crystallized into truth before him. The wolf stood guard, its massive head held high, a low warning rumble vibrating the air, but it did not attack, sensing the shift in the king's presence. Elara's inner voice swelled with cautious hope mixed with the empowering fire of her journey. He rejected me in the grand hall, labeled me unfit and voiceless, yet here he stands facing the peace my song has wrought. I will speak my truth not in anger, but in the strength of what I have become. She spoke softly, her words carrying on the breeze like the first notes of a new dawn. Your Majesty, the bond you outlawed has chosen me, and through it the wars have ended not by force but by harmony. The great wolf saw in me what your decree refused to acknowledge, a voice that brings balance where dominance only breeds conflict. King Thorne dismounted, his movements deliberate as he approached the edge of the grove, stopping a respectful distance from the wolf, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword more from habit than threat. In that brief moment his perspective shifted inward, a deep internal wave of shock crashing over him. As the Omega he had publicly humiliated stood transformed before him, radiant with an ancient power that made his own laws feel suddenly hollow. Doubt flooded his thoughts like a river breaking its banks. How could I have been so blind? My decree was meant to safeguard the realm from what I saw as weakness, yet she, an Omega I cast aside, has achieved peace my armies bled for. The mistake weighs on me now heavier than any battlefield loss. Her song echoes the truth I ignored, and regret stirs where certainty once ruled. He cleared his throat, his voice measured, careful not to break the fragile tension between them. Elara, is it not? The one who dared speak against me in the hall. I came to confront the one who defied my law, yet what I find is a miracle I cannot deny. Tell me how this bond came to be, and why the creature that slew so many alphas before now bows to you. The slow burn of their encounter built in the space between his words, and hers the air charged with unspoken history and budding respect. Elara met his gaze without flinching, her inner thoughts affirming her growth from invisible to seen. He questions me without hostility, the first crack in his armor, and I will plant the seeds of change with every answer. She replied, her tone emotional, yet empowering, laced with the poetic depth of her journey. It began with a song, Your Majesty, a harmony born from the bloodline they tried to erase. The wolf did not bow, it chose trust over fear, just as I chose to walk into its territory when your laws left me with nothing but my voice. This peace, it is not mine alone, it belongs to every Omega who has lived in shadows waiting to be heard. Thorne's eyes softened for the first instant, a flicker of remorse crossing his features as he absorbed her words, the weight of his initial mistake pressing heavier on his shoulders. He nodded slowly, the dialogue drawing them closer in tentative understanding, the grove's golden light casting long shadows that seemed to bridge the divide between ruler and outcast. Yet as their conversation deepened, the distant sound of more riders approached from the capital. Urgent messengers, no doubt carrying news of unrest in the council, where dissenters plotted against this very bond. The wolf tensed once more, its ears pricking forward, while Elara's heart tightened with anticipation. The fragile thread of their emerging connection, now tested by the kingdom's lingering resistance. Leaving the king and the Omega standing on the edge of something greater than either could yet fully grasp, a slow burn that promised redemption or ruin, depending on the choices that lay ahead in the gathering twilight. The golden light of the midday sun filtered through the ancient canopy as Elara walked beside King Thorne along the winding forest path that led back toward the capital, the great ancient wolf padding silently at her side like a living shadow of protection and power that made every step feel lighter than the invisible days she had left behind. The air hummed with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds drawn closer by the lingering harmony of her gift, creating a serene bubble around their small traveling party that contrasted sharply with the tension still lingering between the Omega and the king who had once rejected her so publicly. Her heart beat with a careful rhythm of hope and caution as she glanced sideways at Thorne, his tall frame moving with the confident stride of a ruler, yet his shoulders carried a subtle weight that spoke of inner turmoil she could sense even without word. I must tread carefully, she thought, her inner voice balancing the empowering surge of her bond with the lingering fear of betrayal. He has seen the peace my song brought, yet his laws still echo in my bones. This journey together could mend what was broken or shatter the fragile trust we are building, one guarded word at a time. The wolf nuzzled her hand gently, its massive head brushing her shoulder in a gesture of reassurance that filled her with warmth, reminding her that she was no longer alone in the margins of the kingdom. Thorne cleared his throat, his voice low and measured as they crested a gentle rise overlooking a valley dotted with wildflowers swaying in the breeze. I never imagined an Omega could achieve what my armies bled for, he began, his words carrying a guarded vulnerability that surprised her. Tell me, Elara, of your life before the decree, before the hall where I silenced you so harshly. What losses have shaped the voice that now commands the divine? Elara drew a steadying breath, her fingers trailing along the wolf's fur as she shared pieces of her story, the pain softened by the empowering light of her journey. My family was taken when I was a child, she said, her tone emotional, yet steady, laced with the poetic ache of memory. Alphas enforcing early restrictions stormed our home, tearing apart the only world I knew, because they feared the harmony in my mother's song. I learned to become invisible in the palace, mending cloaks, serving meals in silence, believing my gift was a curse that would only bring more loss. Yet that silence taught me the strength of the voiceless, the power that blooms in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to rise. Thorne listened, his gaze fixed on the path ahead, but his expression softened with each word, the weight of her story pressing upon him like the ancient trees overhead. They continued walking, the wolf's protective presence keeping any distant threats at bay as the path narrowed, forcing them closer together, their arms occasionally brushing in tentative connection that sent a quiet spark through the air. His inner thoughts churned in a deep moment of regret, the kind that reshaped a king's soul from within. How could I have been so blind to the cost of my own decree? I saw Omegas as threats to order, weak and emotional, when in truth their gentle strength could have prevented the needless blood I spilled across 3 borders. Elara's bond, the wolf's choice, it exposes my mistake fully. The wars I waged in the name of dominance were shadows compared to the peace she offers, and now regret burns where pride once stood, leaving me humbled before the very woman I humiliated. He stopped abruptly, turning to face her fully, his eyes meeting hers with raw honesty that bridged the divide between ruler and outcast. I admitted, Elara, he said, his voice thick with emotion, the words flowing like a long withheld confession. My law stripped rights that should never have been taken. The wars ended not because of my command, but because of your song, your courage. The lives lost, the families broken, they weigh on me now heavier than any crown. I was wrong to reject what I did not understand, and I see the needless cost in every shadow your story casts. The dialogue hung between them, charged with the slow burn of understanding, his admission drawing them closer in a tentative trust that felt like the first warm rays after endless night. Elara's inner thoughts swelled with cautious hope, her heart opening just enough to let his regret take root. He speaks from the depths, not as a king, but as a man confronting his flaws. This vulnerability, it mirrors my own journey from silence to strength, and perhaps together we can rewrite the laws that once silenced us both. She reached out her hand, resting lightly on his arm, the touch brief, yet meaningful, a bridge built on shared loss and emerging respect. Your words honor the voiceless, your majesty, she replied, her voice rich with empowering warmth. The pain of those wars, the families torn apart, they echo my own, but your willingness to see the truth, it plants seeds of change. We walk this path together now under the wolf's protection, and if trust can grow from such regret, then perhaps the kingdom can heal as I have begun to heal. Thorne nodded his hand, covering hers for a fleeting moment, the contact sending a quiet current of connection through them, both the slow burn romance flickering like a candle flame in the wind, steady yet fragile. They resumed their journey, the capital's distant spires now visible on the horizon, the wolf leading the way with unwavering loyalty as the forest gave way to open fields bathed in afternoon light. The exchange had lightened the air between them, stories of loss weaving threads of understanding that pulled them nearer with every step, yet as the path opened wider, a column of smoke rose from the outskirts of the city, signaling unrest in the villages where loyalists to the old decree gathered in hushed clusters, their eyes turning toward the approaching party with suspicion and anger. Elara's heart tightened with anticipation, her inner voice affirming her resolve, even as the wolf tensed beside her, sensing the brewing conflict that could test their budding trust before it had time to fully bloom. The king, who had admitted his mistake, now faced the consequences alongside her, the fragile peace they carried together, suddenly feeling like a delicate thread stretched across a gathering storm that threatened to unravel everything they had only just begun to mend. The sheltered camp nestled in a secluded hollow where ancient willows draped their branches like protective curtains around a small fire that crackled softly, casting dancing shadows across the forest floor, while the night sky unfolded overhead in a velvet expanse dotted with stars that seemed to lean closer, as if listening to the quiet unfolding between them. The great ancient wolf rested peacefully nearby, its massive form curled in a protective circlet, breathing deep and steady, a living testament to the bond that had already rewritten the kingdom's fate. Elara sat on a fallen log, her cloak drawn around her shoulders, the warmth of the flames painting her face in golden hues that made her feel seen in a way the palace shadows never allowed. She drew a slow breath, letting the melody rise from her throat, once more the whispering harmony flowing rich and tender, a healing song woven from the depths of her lineage, notes that carried the power to mend what war had torn apart. The tune wrapped around the camp like a gentle embrace, softening the edges of exhaustion and doubt, filling the air with an ethereal calm that even the wind seemed to honor. Her inner thoughts celebrated the emergence of her voice like sunlight breaking through endless cloud. I was the Omega who hid her song in the margins, mending cloaks and serving in silence, believing my gift was a burden to be buried, but now it heals, it soothes, it rises unashamed and powerful. This melody is my truth, my strength, and it has brought me here to this moment where the king who once rejected me sits across the fire, listening with open ears. The wolf sighed contentedly, its eyes half closed in peaceful trust as the song worked its magic, easing the tension from the very trees around them. King Thorne sat on the opposite side of the fire, his broad shoulders relaxing for the first time since the ride began, his battle-worn features softened by the flickering light, revealing lines of fatigue and something deeper, a quiet vulnerability that the crown could no longer hide. In this important moment, his perspective shifted inward, the weight of leadership giving way to raw reflection as the healing melody washed over him like cool water on fevered skin. The notes reached into the corners of his soul, soothing the scars of countless battles and the heavier burden of his own mistakes. How could I have been so blind, he thought, the regret now fully confronting him with sincere clarity that left no room for denial. I rejected her kind with a decree born of fear and pride, believing Omegas unfit for the sacred bonds that balanced our world. Yet her song, her gift, has ended wars I could not win and brought peace where my commands only bred more conflict. The lives lost, the families shattered, they rest on my shoulders now, and I owe her more than words can carry. I must voice this apology not as a king, but as a man humbled before the truth she embodies. He lifted his gaze, meeting hers across the flames, the unspoken warmth between them growing like embers stirred by a careful hand. Elara, your song, it reaches places I did not know were wounded, he said, his voice low and sincere, carrying the emotional depth of a man confronting his flaws. I apologize for the decree that stripped you of rights you never deserved to lose. I rejected you in that hall not because of weakness in you, but because of blindness in me. Your voice, the harmony you share with the wolf, it has shown me that true strength blooms in gentleness. And I regret every moment I silenced what could have healed us sooner. The dialogue wove between them, laced with budding respect and the slow burn of connection that felt both fragile and inevitable, like the first buds of spring after a harsh winter. Elara's heart swelled with empowering warmth, her thoughts affirming the journey from voiceless to valued. His apology, it honors the pain we all carried, and in this shared vulnerability, I see the possibility of change, not just for me, but for every Omega who still walks unseen. She replied, her words flowing with poetic emotion that blended seamlessly with the lingering melody. Your regret honors the voiceless, Your Majesty, and it gives me hope that the bond we share now can extend beyond this fire to the entire kingdom. I once believed my gift was a curse to be hidden, but your willingness to listen transforms it into a bridge, one we can walk together toward a future where no one is cast aside. Thorne nodded, his hand reaching across the space between them to rest briefly on hers, the touch light yet charged with unspoken promise, the slow burn romance deepening in the quiet intimacy of the camp. The wolf shifted slightly, its presence a silent witness to the moment, binding their paths with threads of trust and warmth that promised redemption for both. Yet as the melody faded into a peaceful hush, and the fire popped softly, sending sparks dancing upward, a distant sound pierced the night, the urgent gallop of a single rider breaking through the trees. A messenger from the capital emerged, breathless and wide-eyed, dismounting quickly with news that shattered the fragile peace of their shelter. My king, the council grows restless, he panted, his voice urgent and laced with warning. Dissenters loyal to the old decree rally in the outer halls, demanding the bond be dissolved, claiming it threatens everything we stand for. They speak of rebellion if the Omega's voice is allowed to rewrite our laws. Elara's hand tightened around Thorne's, the wolf rising to its feet with alert energy as the weight of the kingdom's resistance pressed in once more. The slow burn connection they had nurtured now faced its first true test, the budding respect between them suddenly standing on the edge of political flames that could either forge them stronger or consume the hope they had only just begun to share, leaving the night air thick with uncertainty as the messenger's words hung like a gathering storm on the horizon. The Grand Council Hall of the capital echoed with the weight of centuries as Elara stepped through the towering oak doors at King Thorne's side, the great ancient wolf padding silently beside her, its massive silver form casting long shadows across the polished marble floor that gleamed under the light of 100 crystal chandeliers. The air hung heavy with the scent of polished wood and lingering incense, the walls adorned with banners of past victories, now seeming to watch the unfolding scene with ancient judgment. Alphas filled the long curved tables, their faces etched with skepticism and barely contained anger, as murmurs rippled through the assembly like storm clouds gathering before a downpour. Elara's heart beat steady and strong, her inner thoughts surging with empowering fire that transformed the once invisible Omega into a beacon of unyielding resolve. I stood in this very hall weeks ago, trembling and silenced by his decree, yet now I return with the divine bond that ended 3 wars, my voice no longer a whisper, but a force that demands to be heard. The powerless have risen, and they will not shrink back into the shadows. The wolf's presence radiated calm authority, its eyes scanning the room with quiet intelligence as it positioned itself protectively at her flank, a living symbol of the harmony she had forged in the depths of the forbidden forest. King Thorne stood tall at the head of the dais, his royal robes flowing around him like a river of deep crimson, his hand resting lightly near hers in a gesture of quiet support that spoke volumes without words. He raised his voice commanding, yet laced with the regret that had softened his edges since their journey together. Counselors, hear me now. The great ancient wolf has chosen Elara, an Omega whose song brought peace where my laws and armies could not. The borders stand silent, the enemy packs revere the divine as we all should. We must reconsider the decree that stripped bonding rights from her kind, for it has proven itself a mistake born of fear, not wisdom. The hall erupted in a wave of heated voices, alphas slamming fists on tables, their faces flushing with outrage as one burly counselor rose to his feet, his beard bristling with defiance. This is madness, Your Majesty, he bellowed, his words crashing like thunder across the chamber. An Omega bonding with the sacred creature defies every tradition we hold sacred. Dissolve this bond at once before it unravels the very order you fought to protect. We bled on those borders while she sang her way to false power. Elara felt the weight of their stares, yet her inner strength only blazed brighter, her thoughts weaving through the chaos with cinematic clarity, the hall's grand tapestries seeming to come alive. with the stories of voiceless Omegas who had waited generations for this moment. They see me as a threat, but I am the voice they silenced, the powerless one who now stands for every Omega who mended cloaks in shadows and dreamed of more. I will speak not in anger, but in the power of truth. She stepped forward, her voice rising clear and emotional, carrying the poetic resonance of her gift like a melody that cut through the storm. Honorable counselors, the bond you demand to dissolve is not mine alone to surrender, it belongs to the harmony that ended the wars you could not win. I was invisible once, mending your garments, serving your feasts in silence, while my kind bore the weight of your decrees without complaint. But the great wolf chose with its heart, seeing strength where you saw weakness. My song is the voice of the voiceless, and it calls for balance, not dominance. Will you cling to fear or open your eyes to the peace we can build together? The words hung in the air, charged with raw emotion, her presence transforming the hall from a place of judgment to one of awakening, as several younger alphas shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flickering with doubt. Thorne's perspective surfaced briefly in this pivotal moment, his inner thoughts churning with deep resolve as he watched her stand unbowed. She embodies what I failed to see, her courage exposes my blindness, and I will defend her not as a ruler clinging to power, but as a man redeemed by her light. He raised his hand, silencing the growing uproar, his voice steady and laced with newfound conviction. Elara speaks truth, counselors. I rejected her gift, once believing it threatened our strength, but her bond has brought the peace my commands never could. The decree will be examined and revised for the good of all, not just alphas. We stand at the edge of a new era, one where the powerless are heard. Heated dialogue exploded, once more voices overlapping in a storm of protest and tentative agreement, until a rival Alpha Lord Garrick, a towering figure with scars from countless battles and eyes burning with unyielding loyalty to the old ways, pushed forward from the back of the hall, his fist clenched around the hilt of his ceremonial blade. You would rewrite our laws for an Omega's whim, he snarled, his words slicing through the chamber like a blade aimed at the heart of the new peace. The Pax will not stand for this. If you proceed with this madness, the outer territories will rise in rebellion, and the blood that follows will stain your crown forever. The hall fell into a charged silence as Garrick's threat echoed off the walls, hanging unresolved. Like a dark cloud over the assembly, the alphas exchanging uneasy glances while the wolf tensed at Elara's side, its low growl rumbling through the floor like a warning from the divine itself. Elara's inner thoughts surged with determination, even as the mini cliffhanger gripped her heart. The storm is broken, but I will not falter. My voice has ignited the change, and whatever rebellion comes, it will meet the harmony that cannot be broken. The fragile alliance in the hall teetered on the brink, the political conflict, now a living fire that threatened to consume everything she and Thorne had begun to build, leaving the fate of the kingdom suspended in the tense silence that followed Garrick's ominous vow. The Grand Council Hall pulsed with electric tension as the echoes of Lord Garrick's threat still vibrated through the marble columns like a warning bell, tolling for the old order. Elara stood tall at the center of the dais, her hand resting lightly on the great ancient wolf's powerful shoulder, the creature's silver fur warm and steady beneath her fingers, grounding her amid the storm of hostile stares. The air thickened with the scent of polished wood and rising anger, the crystal chandeliers casting fractured light across the faces of alphas who gripped their seats as if ready to rise in revolt. Her heart raced, yet her inner thoughts surged with unshakable determination, transforming the once invisible Omega into a pillar of quiet fire. They threaten rebellion because my bond shatters their illusions of control, but I will not yield. The voice I have fought so hard to claim will carry every voiceless soul through this chaos and into the light of true peace. King Thorne stepped forward, his crimson robes sweeping the floor, his presence commanding yet softened by the regret that had deepened with every shared moment on their journey, his eyes flicking to Elara with protective resolve that spoke louder than any decree. The negotiation resumed in heated waves, voices overlapping like clashing swords as counselors demanded the bond's immediate dissolution, while younger alphas murmured in tentative support, the divide splitting the hall into factions that teetered on the brink of open fracture. Elara lifted her chin, her voice cutting through the din, clear and emotional, carrying the poetic strength of her gift like a melody that refused to be drowned. This is no whim of an Omega, she said, her words flowing with empowering warmth that made several listeners lean forward despite themselves. The great wolf chose harmony over hatred, and its presence has already healed borders torn by wars you yourselves could not end. To reject this bond is to reject the future where every kind Alpha, Beta, and Omega stands equal under the same sky. The wolf suddenly tensed beside her, its massive ears pricking forward, a low, resonant growl rumbling from its chest that vibrated through the floor like distant thunder signaling danger before anyone else could sense it. In that split-second cinematic chaos unfolded, the creature lunged forward, its body becoming a living shield of fur and ancient power, just as a hidden assassin slipped from the shadows behind a towering banner, his blade glinting with poison meant for Elara's heart, the anti-Omega faction's desperate strike born of fear and loyalty to the old decree. The wolf's massive form intercepted the attack, its shoulder absorbing the blow with a thunderous impact that sent the assassin sprawling, the blade clattering harmlessly across the marble while guards rushed forward to seize the man, his face twisted in rage as he shouted curses against the Omega who dared upend their world. Elara's breath caught her inner thoughts blazing with fierce determination, even as her hand flew to the wolf's side, checking for injury that the bond assured her was none. They strike from shadows because they cannot face the truth. My voice has already changed everything, and this attempt only proves how deeply the powerless now threaten their crumbling power. I am no longer the girl who hid in silence. I am the force that shields the future, and I will stand unbroken. King Thorne's perspective shifted inward in this critical moment, his regret deepening like roots cracking stone as he watched the woman he had once rejected nearly fall to the very hatred his laws had fueled. How my blindness has cost us all, he thought, the weight of his mistake crashing over him with fresh intensity. I outlawed her kind, believing it preserved order, yet my decree birthed this assassin, this fracture that now endangers the peace she alone created. Regret burns hotter than any battlefield scar, and I vow here to protect her not as a distant king, but as a man redeemed by her courage. He strode to her side, his hand finding hers in a firm protective grip, his voice rising with emotional conviction that silenced the hall once more. This coward's blade proves the rot in our old ways, he declared, his words laced with raw sincerity as guards dragged the assassin away. Elara, you stand under my protection now, and forever the bond you share with the wolf is sacred, and any who raise a hand against you raise it against the crown itself. I regret the laws that invited this violence, and I swear on my honor to rewrite them so no Omega walks in fear again. The dialogue between them wove through the tension like threads of gold, his vow drawing them closer. In the slow burn of trust forged through shared peril, while the wolf remained at her side, its eyes gleaming with ancient loyalty. Elara squeezed his hand, her reply soft yet powerful, carrying the empowering light of her journey. Your protection honors the voiceless, your majesty, and it strengthens the bridge we build together from the ashes of rejection. Yet even as the words left her lips, Lord Garrick rose again from his seat, his scarred face flushed with fury, his voice booming like a final declaration of war. You vow protection for an Omega, while the outer territories arm themselves against this blasphemy, he snarled, his eyes locking onto Elara with unyielding hatred. The packs loyal to the true order will not bow to this weakness. Mark my words, King, if you proceed with her laws, the uprising will sweep these halls in fire and blood, and the kingdom you claim to save will fracture beyond repair. The hall erupted in fresh chaos, alphas shouting in agreement or protest, the air crackling with the threat of civil divide as Garrick's final warning hung unresolved like a blade poised over the heart of the realm. Elara's thoughts surged with resolve even as the wolf growled deeper, the political storm now fully unleashed, leaving the fragile alliances shattered and the kingdom teetering on the edge of open chaos where one wrong step could ignite the very rebellion that threatened to consume the peace her song had so carefully begun. The sacred ancient grove hummed with ancient energy as Elara followed the great ancient wolf deeper into its heart, where towering trees formed a natural cathedral under a moon that hung full and luminous like a silver beacon guiding lost souls home. The air shimmered with mist that glowed softly around them, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs, an earth awakening from long slumber, while distant howls echoed in reverence as if the forest itself recognized the ritual about to unfold. Her steps felt lighter than they had in the palace shadows where she once mended cloaks and served In silence now every footfall echoed with purpose as the wolf led her to the center of a circle of standing stones etched with forgotten runes that pulsed faintly with inner light. The creature settled at her feet, its massive head resting gently against her leg, a silent invitation that pulled her into the ceremony with a pull stronger than any royal command. Elara closed her eyes, letting the whispering harmony rise from her throat, unbidden the melody, weaving through the night like threads of starlight, binding her soul to the divine bond that had already changed everything. Shimmering waves of golden light began to emanate from the wolf, spreading outward in radiant ripples that bathed her skin in warmth, chasing away the last remnants of fear and invisibility. Her inner thoughts swelled with empowering clarity, like a river breaking free after years of dams. I was the Omega, cast aside, voiceless and powerless in the grand hall, yet here in this sacred place, my gift awakens, fully transforming the girl who hid in margins into a woman whose voice commands the ancient powers. The light fills me not with borrowed strength, but with the truth I always carried, the power of the powerless, rising unstoppable and true. The ritual intensified as the wolf lifted its head and joined her song, its deep resonant rumble, blending with her melody, creating a harmony that made the standing stones glow brighter than mist, swirling into ethereal patterns that danced like living memories of Omegas who had come before her. Waves of energy coursed through her body, awakening every hidden corner of her gift, the whispering harmony expanding until it felt as though her very essence expanded, reaching out to touch the kingdom beyond the grove, calming distant winds and softening the edges of rising unrest. She opened her eyes to find King Thorne standing at the grove's edge, his tall frame silhouetted by moonlight, his expression one of supportive awe rather than the cold judgment she had once known. He had followed at a respectful distance, his presence a quiet anchor amid the high stakes of the transformation, watching as the light enveloped her completely. Elara extended a hand toward him, her voice emerging between notes of the song, emotional and poetic, carrying the weight of their shared journey. Your Majesty, you stand here not as the king who rejected me, but as the one who chose to walk beside me through the storm. This awakening, it is not mine alone, it carries the redemption you have offered, and the bridge we build together from regret to renewal. Thorne stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the golden waves, his voice low and sincere, laced with the deep internal shift that had reshaped him since their first encounter by the wolf. Elara, your light humbles me more than any battlefield victory ever could, he replied, his word flowing with raw honesty that affirmed his role in her path. I watched you rise from the shadows I created with my decree, and now I see the queen you were always meant to become. My mistake brought us here, but your courage transforms it into something greater. Let this ritual bind us not in chains of law, but in the harmony that heals the kingdom we both love. The dialogue wrapped around them like the mist itself, drawing them nearer as the light peaked in a brilliant crescendo that lifted Elara slightly off the ground, her body glowing with newfound power. The full gift now awakened, shimmering through her veins like liquid starlight, granting her the ability to extend the bond's peace across vast distances. Her inner thoughts embraced the empowerment fully, the journey from oppressed to powerful complete in this moment, yet still unfolding. I have a voice now, one that changes laws and hearts, and with Thorne at my side, the voiceless will never be invisible again. Yet as the waves of light began to settle and the wolf nuzzled her hand in final blessing, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the horizon, not from the sky, but from the direction of the capital, where torches flickered like angry fireflies, signaling the gathering of dissenters loyal to Lord Garrick's warnings. The external pressure mounted like a gathering storm, the ritual's success now hanging in delicate balance as scouts reported unrest swelling into open defiance, the kingdom teetering on the edge of the very conflict her awakening was meant to quell, leaving Elara and Thorne standing in the afterglow with hearts united, but the path ahead shadowed by the high stakes that demanded they face the final trials together or risk losing everything they had transformed. The radiant waves of golden light continued to pulse through the sacred ancient grove, wrapping Elara in a cocoon of shimmering energy that felt like the very heartbeat of the earth rising to meet her own as the standing stones glowed brighter, casting ethereal patterns across the mist that swirled like living veils of destiny. The great ancient wolf lifted its massive head, its eyes locking onto hers with ancient wisdom that pulled her deeper into the ritual's climax, and she felt the final surge of power building in her chest like a storm of starlight ready to break free. Her voice rose stronger, now intertwining seamlessly with the creature's deep resonant howl, creating a harmony that shattered the last chains of her old fears, dissolving the trauma of her childhood. Raid the humiliation in the grand hall, and the years of invisible silence in one breathtaking crescendo of sound and light. The energy swirled faster around her, lifting strands of her hair and bathing her skin in warmth that chased away every shadow of doubt, filling her with a queenly presence that radiated from within, like the first light of dawn breaking over a war-torn land. Elara's inner thoughts bloomed with empowering reflection, marking the profound shift that had carried her from the oppressed Omega, who once mended cloaks in the palace shadows, to a woman whose voice commanded the divine and reshaped kingdoms. I stand here no longer broken or voiceless, but whole and sovereign, my gift fully awakened, transforming every wound into strength, every silenced moment into a melody that echoes across borders. The powerless have claimed their throne, and I will wear this light not as a crown of conquest, but as the harmony that lifts every Omega who still dreams in the dark. The wolf's howl blended perfectly with her song, sending ripples of radiant harmony outward through the trees, calming distant winds and softening the edges of the kingdom's unrest until the very air seemed to sigh in reverence. Tears of joy traced her cheeks as the light peaked in a brilliant explosion that settled gently into her bones, granting her the full realization of the bond, a sacred partnership that made her feel unbreakable and seen in ways she had only whispered about in secret melodies. King Thorne watched from the edge of the grove, his tall frame bathed in the fading glow, his heart swelling with emotions that transcended the weight of his crown in this important moment, his perspective shifting inward to reveal the profound pride and love that had quietly taken root through their shared journey. She is magnificent, he thought, the regret of his past decree now fully transformed into admiration that burned brighter than any battlefield victory. I once rejected her, believing Omegas unfit, yet here she stands radiant and powerful, her song healing what my laws broke. Pride fills me for the woman who rose despite my blindness, and love stirs deeper than I ever imagined possible, a partnership of equals that redeems my every mistake and calls me to stand beside her as more than a king, but as her true equal in heart and purpose. He stepped forward into the circle of stones, his eyes meeting hers with raw sincerity as the wolf settled peacefully at her side, its massive form a symbol of their united strength. Elara, your light, it humbles and inspires me beyond words, he said, his voice thick with emotion, carrying the poetic depth of a man fully redeemed. In this moment I see the queen you were always destined to become, and I offer you not just my protection, but my heart as your equal partner. Together we will face whatever comes, sealing this bond not through force, but through the harmony we have both embraced. The dialogue wove between them like the final threads of the ritual, binding their paths in unbreakable trust as Elara reached out, taking his hand in hers, the touch warm and affirming a seal on their partnership of equals that promised a future where Alpha and Omega stood side by side, rewriting the world with gentle strength. Your words complete the transformation, your majesty, she replied, her tone empowering and laced with the rich imagery of their shared redemption. From the shadows of rejection I have risen to this light, and with you beside me as my equal, the voiceless will never walk alone again. Our bond, our love, it becomes the foundation for laws that heal rather than divide, and I am no longer afraid, for the queen within me knows the power we hold together. The grove fell into a peaceful hush, the energies settling into a soft golden aura that enveloped them both, yet in the distance the sound of approaching hooves thundered through the trees, urgent and unrelenting as scouts burst into the clearing, their faces pale with alarm. Enemies from the outer territories loyal to Lord Garrick's rebellion surged closer, their torches flickering like angry flames against the night sky, signaling that the high stakes of their new alliance had drawn the final confrontation sooner than expected. The wolf tensed at Elara's side, its ears pricking forward, while Thorne's hand tightened protectively around hers, the fragile peace of the ritual's climax now tested by the gathering storm that threatened to engulf the kingdom, just as their partnership had only begun to shine, leaving their united hearts racing against the encroaching shadows of war that demanded they rise as one or risk everything, dissolving in the flames of defiance. The grand hall of the capital blazed with the light of 1,000 lanterns as Elara strode through. The towering doors at King Thorne's side, the great ancient wolf padding silently beside her, its massive silver form radiating an aura of divine calm that hushed the assembled court and packs gathered from every corner of the realm. Banners of old victories fluttered overhead, yet today the air hummed with something new, a reverence that shimmered like golden mist around the Omega, who had once been cast aside in this very space. The Alphas sat rigid in their rows, their faces a tapestry of shock, awe, and simmering defiance, while Omegas who had slipped in from the shadows watched with wide eyes, filled with fragile hope that had never dared breathe before. Elara felt the weight of every gaze, yet her inner thoughts blazed with empowering fire that lifted her chin and straightened her spine, transforming the girl who had fled humiliated from this hall into the voice that would rewrite its very foundations. I stand here not as the invisible servant who mended cloaks in silence, but as the chosen of the divine. My song has ended wars, and now it will shatter the chains of every decree that silenced my kind. The powerless rise today, and the world will hear us roar in harmony, not rage. The wolf's presence filled the chamber with quiet power, its eyes scanning the crowd with ancient intelligence as it settled protectively at her flank, the golden light of their completed bond still faintly glowing around them, both casting cinematic rays that danced across the marble floor like living threads of destiny, weaving a new tapestry for the kingdom. King Thorne stood tall, his hand brushing hers in a gesture of quiet solidarity, his crimson robes flowing like a river of shared redemption as he raised his voice to open the confrontation. Today we face the truth of our past, he declared, his tone steady, yet laced with the regret that had reshaped him from within. The decree that stripped Omegas of bonding rights was my mistake, born of fear, and now Elara and the great wolf have shown us the path to healing. Let her speak for the voiceless, and let us listen with open hearts. Elara stepped forward into the center of the dais, her voice rising clear and emotional, carrying the poetic resonance of her gift like a melody that commanded the hall into silent, honorable court and packs of the realm. She began, her words flowing with the rich imagery of her journey from oppression to power. I once stood among you trembling while the king declared my kind unfit for the sacred bonds that balance our world. I was invisible, mending your garments, serving your feasts, believing my voice held no worth because your laws told me so. Yet the great ancient wolf chose me not through force, but through the harmony in my song, and its presence ended 3 wars in a single breath of peace. Look around you, the borders stand quiet, the enemy packs bow in reverence, not to alpha might, but to the gentle strength you long dismissed. My gift, the whispering harmony, it is the voice of every Omega who has lived in shadows waiting to be heard, and today I challenge the decree openly, for it has proven itself a chain that bound us all, not just my kind. The hall stirred with cinematic reverence, the light from the wolf's aura brightening as if the very stones of the palace leaned in to listen, while some alphas shifted uncomfortably, their hands tightening on armrests, yet others nodded slowly, their eyes reflecting the first cracks in the old order. Thorne's perspective flickered briefly, his inner thoughts swelling with pride and love as he watched her command the room. She stands where I once silenced her, her courage redeems my every error, and I will defend this light with my life, for she is the queen who will lead us into true balance. He spoke then, his voice intertwining with hers in emotional dialogue that highlighted their slow burn journey. Elara, your words echo the regret I carry daily, he said, turning to face her fully before the court. I rejected you in this hall, believing dominance preserved our strength, yet your bond has taught me that true power blooms in the voices we once silenced. I stand with you now, not as a king above, but as your equal partner ready to rewrite the laws that divided us. Let the decree fall, and let harmony rise in its place. Elara met his gaze, her hand finding his in a moment of shared strength, her reply laced with empowering warmth that sent ripples of hope through the Omegas in the crowd. Your support honors the transformation we have walked together, your majesty, from rejection to redemption, and it lights the path for every soul who believed they had no voice. Together we prove that the powerless hold the key to peace, and the voiceless will shape the future, no longer bound by fear. The chamber erupted in a rising wave of sound, some alphas cheering while others rose in protest, their voices clashing like distant thunder, yet the wolf's low resonant rumble cut through the noise, calming the air with divine authority that forced even the loudest dissenters to pause. Lord Garrick pushed forward from the back, his scarred face twisted with fury, yet the sight of the wolf and the golden light surrounding Elara made him falter, his threats dying on his lips as the crowd's energy shifted toward reverence and tentative acceptance. Concessions began to form in the air as counselors exchanged glances, the weight of her words and the miracle of the bond pressing them toward change amid the rising cheers that swelled like a tide of awakening. Elara's inner thoughts surged with fulfillment even as the confrontation reached its peak. They hear me now, the Invisible One has become the voice of the throne, and this moment forces the old order to bend or break. Yet as the cheers grew louder, a final shadow flickered at the edges of the hall where loyalists too. Garrick slipped away into side passages, their faces set with dark determination, signaling that while the public confrontation had bent the court, the true battle for lasting change still simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt once more if the new laws were not sealed swiftly and firmly, leaving the kingdom's future balanced on the edge of victory and the lingering threat of those who refused to let the old decree die quietly in the light of her awakening. The grand hall of the capital transformed into a sea of shimmering light as Elara stood at the center of the dais beside King Thorne, the great ancient wolf positioned like a living throne of silver fur and ancient wisdom at her right side, its eyes gleaming with quiet approval, while golden banners unfurled from the rafters bearing new symbols of harmony instead of conquest. Crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon sun, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floor where Omegas, who had once hidden in the shadows, now stood openly among the Alphas, their faces lifted in wonder as the weight of centuries seemed to shift in a single breath. Elara felt the crown of intertwined vines and moonstones settle gently upon her head, its light weight a symbol not of burden, but of the voice she had earned through song and courage. The moment, cinematic and profound as trumpets, sounded in a melody that echoed her own whispering harmony. Her inner thoughts overflowed with fulfillment like a river finally reaching the sea, washing away every scar of invisibility and rejection. I am queen now, not through force or bloodline, but through the bond that chose me. The powerless Omega, who ran from humiliation, has become the voice that reshapes the world, and every law I touch will lift those who walked beside me in silence. Thorne took her hand in his touch warm and steady, his eyes reflecting the pride and love that had grown slowly through their shared trials as he turned to the assembled court and citizens packed into every corner of the hall. Today we crown Queen Elara not as a consort, but as the equal partner who has shown us the true path to peace, he declared, his voice carrying across the chamber with emotional depth that silenced even the last murmurs of doubt. The great wolf has chosen her, and through her gift the wars have ended. Let this moment mark the beginning of laws that honor every voice in our realm. Elara stepped forward, her gown of soft emerald silk flowing like the forest she had once fled into, her presence radiant and commanding as she raised her hand, the wolf nuzzling closer in silent witness to the changes she would enact. The scribes at the long table dipped their quills in fresh ink, ready to record the new statute, while citizens leaned in, their breaths held in anticipation. With clear and empowering resolve, she spoke, her words flowing like the melody that had tamed the divine. As your queen, I declare the old decree null and void. She began, her voice rich with poetic strength that made the air itself seem to brighten. No longer shall Omegas be deemed unfit for sacred bonds. The whispering harmony and all gifts like it are protected and celebrated, for they bring balance where dominance once divided us. Bonding rights are restored to every kind, Alpha, Beta, and Omega alike, and new councils will form with equal voices from all, so that no one walks invisible again. The hall erupted in a wave of cheers and tears, Omegas embracing one another, while many Alphas nodded, slowly their faces softening as the wolf's presence radiated calm approval that eased even the hardest hearts. Thorne stood beside her, his hand never leaving hers, as dialogue intertwining with hers in the slow burn partnership that had earned its place through regret and growth. Your wisdom guides us all, my queen, he said, his tone laced with sincere admiration and love that resonated through the chamber. I once believed my laws protected us, but your song has taught me that true strength lies in lifting the voiceless. Together we rewrite the future, not with swords but with harmony, and I pledge my crown and my heart to see these changes endure. Elara turned to him, her eyes meeting his with empowering warmth, her inner thoughts celebrating the journey that had brought them here from rejection to this united front. His support completes the circle. The king, who humbled himself, now stands as my equal, and in this moment every Omega who mended cloaks in shadows feels their chains fall away. She continued addressing the advisors and citizens directly, her voice carrying the emotional power of transformation. Let sanctuaries rise across the kingdom, where our young can learn the old songs without fear, and let the equal council convene within the moon to ensure every law serves the powerless as much as the powerful. The scribes recorded furiously, the new statutes taking shape on parchment as citizens cheered louder, their voices blending into a chorus that felt like the kingdom itself awakening from a long sleep. Yet even as the celebrations swelled and the wolf howled softly in triumph, sending ripples of peace through the hall, a messenger slipped through a side door, his face pale with urgent news whispered to an advisor, who then approached the dais with hesitant steps. My queen, the outer territories loyal to the old ways still gather in defiance, he reported quietly. Enough for only them to hear, though the wolf's ears pricked forward, sensing the lingering threat. Garrick's followers refuse the new laws and speak of one final stand that could test the harmony we have only just begun to build. Elara's heart tightened with resolve, her inner strength flaring brighter, even as the mini cliffhanger cast a shadow over the triumph. The powerful queen she had become now faced the final test of whether her voice and the laws she had changed could truly hold against the last embers of resistance threatening to ignite the fragile new era into flames once more. The sun rose golden and warm over the rolling hills beyond the capital, where the first stones of the new Omega sanctuary were being laid in a clearing once shadowed by the old decree, now alive with the sounds of hammers and hopeful voices rising like the first notes of a long-forgotten song. Elara walked the freshly turned earth at King Thorne's side, her emerald gown brushing the wildflowers that bloomed in defiant beauty, while the great ancient wolf padded ahead, its massive silver form carving a path of calm through the bustling workers who paused to bow with tears in their eyes. The air carried the rich scent of fresh soil and blooming herbs, the distant spires of the capital gleaming like a promise fulfilled as carts rolled and loaded with timber and stone for the equal council hall that would stand beside the sanctuary, a place where voices from every walk of life would gather under one roof. Her inner thoughts radiated with a deep, empowering strength that made every step feel like a victory. March from the invisible girl who once mended cloaks in the palace shadows to the queen whose song had rewritten the laws that once bound her kind. I stand here as queen not by birth, but by the bond that chose me, the powerless one who fled. Humiliation now watches sanctuaries rise, where Omegas will learn the old harmonies without fear, and the equal council will ensure no law ever silences a heart again. The powerless have become the architects of their own future, and my voice echoes in every stone laid today. Thorne matched her pace, his hand brushing hers in the quiet rhythm they had grown to cherish, his crimson cloak flowing beside her like a banner of shared redemption as he gestured toward the foundation stones with pride that shone in his eyes. Look at what your courage has built, my queen, he said, his voice warm and emotional, carrying the poetic depth of a man who had walked the long road from rejection to this bright dawn. The sanctuary will shelter every Omega who once hid their gifts, and the equal council will give them seats at every table where decisions shape the realm. I once believed my laws protected order, but your light has shown me that chosen family, the bonds we forged through trust and harmony, surpasses any bloodline or decree. Elara turned to him, her fingers intertwining with his, the touch sending a gentle wave of warmth through her chest as former outcasts approached a small group of Omegas who had traveled from the outer villages, their faces weathered yet radiant with hope. One elder woman stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clasped Elara's free hand, the wolf nuzzling close in silent blessing. Queen Elara, your song reached us even in the farthest shadows, she whispered, her words thick with tears. We mended cloaks and served in silence, believing we had no place, but now we stand on ground that belongs to us all. Thank you for giving us back our voices, and for showing us that family is not born, but chosen through the harmony we share. Elara's heart swelled with cinematic fulfillment, the scene unfolding like a living painting under The open sky, the workers pausing their labor to listen the wind, carrying the exchange like a melody that bound them together. Your words honor every step of my journey, she replied, her tone rich with empowering emotion that lifted the group visibly. I was once like you, invisible and afraid, yet the great wolf taught me that the voiceless hold the truest power. This sanctuary will be your home, your academy, your voice, and the equal council will ensure your stories shape every law. We are chosen family, now bound not by blood, but by the courage to rise together. Thorne nodded, his arm slipping around her waist in a gesture of deepening bond, his inner perspective surfacing briefly with profound love and pride. She has transformed me from the king who outlawed hope to the partner who walks these lands in awe of her strength. Our chosen family grows with every soul she lifts, and I will spend my life guarding the light she brings. He spoke aloud, his words flowing with sincere warmth that wove seamlessly into hers. Elara, my queen, your vision turns regret into renewal. I pledge before these witnesses that the equal council will include voices from every margin, and the sanctuary will stand as a beacon where our children learn harmony before dominance. Together we build not just walls, but a legacy where no one is ever invisible again. The group cheered softly, their eyes shining as they joined the workers in placing the first symbolic stones, the groundbreaking ceremony blooming into a moment of shared purpose that made the hills themselves seem to sing. Elara's inner thoughts celebrated the full circle of her arc, the journey from oppressed to powerful, now solidifying in the very ground beneath her feet. The laws are changed, the sanctuaries rise, and with Thorne at my side as true, equal the chosen family, we create will outlast any storm, proving that the voice of the voiceless can indeed change the world. Yet as the celebrations swelled, and the wolf howled in triumph, sending ripples of peace across the lands, a scout approached on horseback, his face etched with urgency, bearing news that a final pocket of resistance in the outer territories had refused the new council, their leaders vowing one last gathering that could test the harmony they had worked so hard to build, leaving the bright future they envisioned suddenly shadowed by the need for one more act of courage to ensure the legacy endured unbroken. The sun dipped low over the kingdom, casting a golden glow across the sprawling academies that now dotted the hills where once only silence and fear had reigned, young voices rising in songs of harmony that echoed the whispering harmony Elara had carried through her darkest days. The great ancient wolf patrolled the peaceful borders, its massive silver form a living guardian, whose presence alone kept every pack in reverence, no longer a creature of terror, but a symbol of balance that watched over lands where alphas, betas, and omegas walked side by side without the shadow of old decrees. In the heart of the royal garden, where flowers bloomed in riotous color and fountains sang softly like forgotten lullabies, Elara cradled their first heir, a tiny bundle of warmth wrapped in soft emerald silk, her heart overflowing as the child's small hand reached for the wolf's fur with innocent trust. The air carried the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the distant laughter of students from the new sanctuary academies where omegas learned without fear and equal councils convened under open skies, ensuring every voice shaped the laws of the realm. Elara's inner thoughts wove through the moment like the final notes of a long journey, reflecting on the full arc that had carried her from the oppressed and silent to the powerful queen whose song had changed everything. I once fled this kingdom in humiliation, an invisible omega mending cloaks and serving in shadows, believing my voice held no power, yet here I stand sovereign with a bond that ended war's sanctuaries, that lift the voiceless, and a chosen family that proves bloodlines mean nothing compared to the harmony we build together. The powerless have risen, and their light now illuminates academies and borders alike. My journey from rejection to this garden of unity shows that every silenced heart can become the voice that reshapes the world. She looked down at the heir's peaceful face, then lifted her gaze to King Thorne, who stood beside her. His strong arm wrapped gently around her shoulders, his crimson robes softened by the evening light. The wolf nuzzled closer, its ancient eyes reflecting the same pride that shone in Thorne's expression, as he reached out to stroke the child's cheek with a tenderness that spoke of complete redemption. In this important moment, his perspective surfaced fully, his inner thoughts flowing with the depth of a man who had walked through regret to emerge whole. She has transformed me from the king who outlawed hope and rejected her gift out of fear to the partner who stands in awe of the legacy we share together. My mistake once stripped rights and fueled wars, but her courage, her song, her love redeemed every shadow I cast, and now as we welcome our heir I see the bright future we fought for. Academy, thriving peaceful borders guarded by the divine, and a chosen family stronger than any throne. Pride and love fill me completely for the queen who rose despite my blindness, and I vow silently to guard this harmony with every breath for as long as the stars shine above us. Thorne turned to Elara, his voice rich with emotional warmth that blended seamlessly with the garden's peaceful melody. My queen, look at what your voice has built, he said, his words carrying the poetic depth of their slow burn journey from conflict to this eternal bond. The academies teach every child the songs you once hid, the wolf guards borders where wars once raged. And our heir will grow knowing that chosen family matters more than any bloodline or decree. I once believed my laws preserved strength, but you showed me that true power blooms when the voiceless are heard, and I am forever grateful to stand beside you as your equal watching this legacy unfold. Elara leaned into his embrace, her free hand, finding his the touch a quiet seal on the life they had earned together, her reply flowing with empowering fulfillment that made the garden itself seem to brighten. Your redemption honors every step we took from the grand hall where you silenced me to this garden, where our child will learn freedom, she whispered, her tone laced with the rich imagery of triumph and hope. Together we have created sanctuaries where omegas sing openly, equal councils where every perspective shapes the realm, and a future where no one walks invisible. The powerless have become the foundation of peace, and as we watch our heir grow, I know the voice I found will echo through generations, reminding all that harmony conquers where force once failed. The wolf howled softly, a resonant note that carried across the hills, blending with the laughter from the academies and the gentle breeze through the flowers as the family stood together in the garden of unity, the kingdom thriving under their shared rule, with bright horizons stretching endlessly before them. The air cooed, reaching for the wolf's fur once more, and Elara felt tears of joy trace her cheek. The full circle of her journey complete, from the silent, oppressed girl to the powerful queen whose gift had ended wars, rewritten laws, and built a legacy of chosen family and enduring peace. Her story has come to an end, but our journey together continues. If you found this story inspiring and meaningful, please like the video to support me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next empowering stories. And if you have any thoughts about the characters, her journey, or want to share your own story, please comment below. I really look forward to reading and chatting with you.